one situation, but the other one is Ad Makom She'ado Magia. Magad.
Right. No, but on the other hand, with your principle of eco-kashrut, it would push it and say, here it is. Every gallon I put into my gas tank, OPEC doesn't get a gallon.
Well, listen, all the mitzvahs that come out from driving on soybean oil, there's no question about that. Okay?
Plus the reyach smells like I just went to a restaurant.
But let's say if you were to, so that's wonderful. So you won't be kol dichfin, people will follow you all the days of your life. Oh, this is wonderful.
Still don't know what Yehudis will say. She'll get in the car.
I think she's okay. She's really a good lady.
Oh, she's wonderful.
Why would you tell her?
Well, we had this whole discussion in Chaver about what we feed our pets on Pesach, and because Reb Mark was considering rescuing a dog from the shelter. And so finally, in the end, with all the confusion, we said to him, why did you wait till after Pesach to get the dog?
Because Deborah feeds the dog out when Amber
and
was
we always did. We fed our dogs outside, and because we didn't want to,
values.
and she had a beautiful way of saying it. She said, she always figured that Amber didn't understand Pesach. So why should she suffer from having her? And it's not good for animals to change their diet. So and others, but there was the whole thing.
Would you take a Haggadah, please?
Right. Well, and we said that there were other principles that we felt were, of greater concern here, but Yehudis, on the other hand, is feeding her goldfish vegetables during
It's a Haggadah.
during Pesach.
Well, she is right, because there's a whole question about what do you do here, and what is asur b'hana'ah, etc.
Hi, I wanted those tiny little white shoes out.
Did you guess?
Did that.
The compliments. This is
So, Chevra, so here's what I'd like to do today. I don't want to have to take responsibility for being the teacher, the Morish Shiur, but I'd like us to take a look at Haggadah and say whatever chidushim you remember that touched you. So we're going to have like a sharing, and if anything comes up that looks particularly interesting that we want to explore, we'll do that. There was a blue sefer here, and I don't see it at this moment.
You mean this?
No, this one. Right. Here.
Well, we can first start with coming up with a better chidush than all the minhagim about what to do this year.
With the Shabbat.
With Shabbat.
Yeah.
So I've read, Reb Mark was talking about a halacha. I did research on it after he was talking about it on Wednesday and discovered that most of it is minhagim, about how you get the 3 meals in on Shabbos. All right? And there's one minhag is that you eat you make hamotzi. Then you do Birkat Hamazon, then you have some macaroons, and you do Birkat Hamazon again. But you got to daven early, right? Really early, so that you get all 3.
Because the lechem, the last lechem can't be after 11:30 in the morning or something.
No, it's earlier. Even with the daylight savings time.
Right. Yeah.
It's about 10 something. So the davening has to be done early. So it's a real hashkama davening. And the good part is you don't go to the Seder tired. You can have a nap in the afternoon. That's a real mitzvah d'oraita at this point, because it's really, we get very tired.
Right.
So So what have you come to? What's your conclusion of how to handle Shabbos?
Well, my conclusion is, because Jewish renewal, we'd have to cut Birkat HaShachar by at least half. Shachar, it's no problem, but you would. I'm thinking of what's a good teaching for Amcha to get into more of the spirit, because they have to know when to break between, chometz and to be in that.
Well, the best thing is really to say we make everything Pesachik, and we have outside on the porch a shtickle of challah to make hamotzi on. Then we wash our hands and go in and eat.
Right.
And do the same thing in the morning, and then leave only over just enough so that you can finish it all, because you can't burn it.
That's
Right.
the other problem.
And how? So I don't get, how is it that we've done the biur
Yeah,
on Friday morning?
yeah.
So we've said there's no chametz left in my possession, except for that challah that's out on the porch that I'm going to eat tonight and
Right.
tomorrow morning.
Right.
What? What is that challah out on the porch?
No, never mind the challah. Never mind the more interesting is the biur, because the biur still is there, but we say that should be ka'afra the Arab,
right?
meaning at this point that I don't own it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to remove my ownership from the chometz. Okay. Now, if it's hefka challah out on the porch, I can still eat it.
Maybe the dog will eat it.
You're saying it's not mine.
Whose is it?
Huh?
The neighbors.
It's like you found food.
In so many situations, the other day I was walking behind a restaurant, and I saw that the way in which they had taken leftovers that were not started, leftovers like toast and other things, and left them so that people could come and pick them up. So the hefker is not the issue. But I'm saying this is how we begin with the thing. What kind of yesterday somebody asked me how to go with Sephardic Ashkenazic, and I feel anybody who's at all conscious of health and doesn't want to get constipated with matzah and matzah meal and all that kind of stuff is going to choose kidneys, And for this reason, we don't have to go so much by this minhag and that minhag. We simply say that we take that on. If someone were to go and, on the other hand, for people in Brooklyn who want to have schmaltz and potatoes and matzah meal and kugels and so on and so forth, gesundheit, let them not do thing. But if what are you going to do? You need to have some kind of food that's going to stay with you. It's going to in a decent way.
Well, last year when whatever we were doing for the shiur before Pesach, I brought up the issue of that I've always been intrigued about the ash that's left after biur, and that I saw a similarity to its potential as that is with the parah adumah. All right, because what if it's
Go. You're doing fine.
don't make me conscious that you could use it as a segula, the ash. All right.
That's the reason why I point to him. You gotta tell your Torah on this.
Really?
Go ahead.
Years ago, I was contemplating the paraduma, and I started to play with the ash that was the residue of frankincense and myrrh on charcoal that I only used during spiritual practice. And at that point I was pretty sensitive, and I said to myself, okay, what's this about? And I touched the ash, and I felt a change in the internal charge in me. And I touched it again, and it changed back. And I said, I'm going to play with this. I'm going to try this on people who don't know anything about this. And some of them were goyim. And,
Clueless.
pardon?
Clueless going.
Clueless. And they would come in, they were students of mine. And I would say, okay, I'm going to have you touch this with your index finger and tell me if you experience anything. And if you do, tell me what the experience is. And the first woman I tried it with, she touched, and she said, I felt a brightness coming over me. And I said, okay, touch it again. And she felt a diminishing. So I said, touch it again, we want to leave you with the brightness. And I tried it with a whole bunch of other people. And invariably, it was a similar experience. And I said, the effect of the paraduma seems to be maybe with ash, or ash used for a specific purpose that was spiritual.
So the ash from the Biur, yeah. So the ash from the Biur Chometz, I mean, it certainly could be used. I mean, you'd have to experiment to see if it could be like taken into hospitals and that, or given to people who are prone to lashon hara.
It's temporary. It's very temporary. Anything that contaminates the kedusha, okay, requires restoration, and for a lot of people, that's constant.
It's what?
Constant.
Yeah.
You know what the element of this ash is that's so exciting, because you burn the Heshanis and the Lulavim. With them you do the Bir Chometz, so it's a mitzvah with a mitzvah. And so you can imagine that must be very potent ash.
Yeah.
What I've been doing for years is I have a container of the ash that I carry, but if I move, I pack it up and I carry it with me. And just before Shabbos,
It's like a touch mikveh.
yeah, touch mikveh.
That's great.
Next time you bring us a little bit ash, so we can also give a dip a finger once only.
But if
How do we call this ash in the
Vibhuti.
Vibhuti? I mean,
But if we're in a
used
state-
the Hindu tradition of the time.
we're in a state of kedusha,
Yeah.
and we touch it.
Tomorrow night after Shabbos at the 9 o'clock showing will be again. They're beginning tonight with the Kumbh Mela. They'll be showing the Kumbh Mela tonight, and the guy who filmed it will be there. Remember Justin, young Justin?
Yeah.
He's also involved in that. And so the 7 o'clock showing is too early, so I hope to go tomorrow night.
Where will you go?
It's at the Landmark Theater.
Oh, really?
On Pearl Street between 30th and...
I know. I don't know.
All right, so let's go into the Haggadah itself. Anybody on the Simonim? Anybody has anything to say about Kaddish and things that this time Kaddish we have to keep in mind what Yaknehuz. You know Yaknehuz? Yaknehuz? No?
I used to know, but it's gone.
Yayin Kiddush Ne'er Havdalah Zman. Shalom Aleichem has a character by the Motel Yaknehuz or something like this. Because he was providing the Yayin, the Kiddush, the Ne'er, the Havdalah, the Zman, and so on. So what does that say? What does Yaknehuz say about Kiddush? Bore Pri Hagofen, and then Kiddush, and then Ner of Havdalah, and then Zman.
So you do Kiddush before Havdalah?
And then, yeah.
You do
Yayin, Kiddush, Ner, Havdalah, and then Shechianu. So that's the siman to remember that. Anything else on Kaddish? You know that I have a machlokes with
And this is for
Persian.
Shabbat, for our situation or always?
For no, this year
This year,
especially
yeah.
because you're dealing with Havdalah.
Yeah.
Most of the time you don't have to make Havdalah.
Oh, of
Wouldn't
course.
you put aside to, I don't understand that sequence because why would you put Haggadah in the middle instead of at the beginning of that process?
The reason for that is it's a good question because you are beginning with the seichel. The seichel says make Havdalah, and then because the Shabbos is over.
Mhm.
However, we have Tadir v'she'eno Tadir, Tadir kodem. So Borei Priyagofen is first. And all the days of Pesach is Kiddush, so his Kiddush comes next. And then you go to Ner, and then you go to Havdalah, and then
So
you go to
now
Havdalah.
of Yontif before.
Where does the esh come from?
Huh?
Where does the esh come from?
And then Z is Ayin.
No.
Yaknahu Z.
No.
No, where does
The
the
esh,
fire
where
for
does
the
the fire?
candle come
Where
from?
does the fire come from?
Oh, it has to be Ner Sheshavat.
Okay.
Ner Sheshavat. You really...
You transfer.
Really, I mean, most of the time, that's where you light one of those yard-side
The yard-side
candles
candle.
beforehand, and you leave it on.
So if you're looking in the I mean,
But
the
but really one
Steinsaltz
thing
puts
is-
it in that order, but it has, let's see, well, no, when Passover is on Shabbat, said when Passover is on Saturday night, it's Borei Priya Gofen, Mekadesh Yisrael Vazmanim, Meorei Ha'esh, Hamavdil Ben Kodesh, Shehechianu.
Right, that's what
Yeah.
someone was saying.
But it's interesting that he doesn't explain
For the first night, you light the candles.
he doesn't explain how you light it.
Interesting.
Right, see, that's my question, Zalman. First, we have to do the Havdalah before we do the Nerot Shel Chag, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what
But-
this says.
No, Ner is the Nerot HaShulchan. It's a good question that you ask. When do you light candles? So on Saturday
Yeah, because if
Saturday
Shabbos
night.
isn't over, we
Then how
can't
can we-
pass fire.
That's right.
So how does
So
that
how
work?
does that happen?
So you that's why you make the Ner Shel Yontov afterwards.
Oh, you do, but that's not what the.
So Yayin
Yayin
Kiddush
Kiddush-
Ner
Which
is
kind
what?
of Ner? Is it the Havdalah?
Is it Ner
It's
Havdalah?
the Ner Havdalah.
Oh, Ner Havdalah.
Ner
Okay, good.
Havdalah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay, now it makes sense.
Oh, well, so,
Yayin Kiddush,
see,
Ner
now then the
Havdalah.
Haggadah doesn't put it in the right way.
And then
No,
again,
Which one does
Yayin,
it do it?
Yayin Kiddush,
Kiddush,
Ner Havdalah,
But they don't
Yeah,
have the
that's good.
lighting of the
Shehechianu,
Ner Shel
and then
Chag.
Ner Chag.
that's Zman.
No, but it. Oh,
Where
see,
is
they
it?
leave this. See, some Haggadahs don't put in the
Yeah.
lighting of the.
What have they got here?
It starts with.
Before Kiddush?
Just a second. If it's Saturday night, it's Borei Priya Gofen.
Right?
Then I continue Mekadesh Yisrael Azmanim. Borei Meorei Ha'esh. Ben Kodesh Lechol. Ben Kodesh Lechol.
So
Which
that's
Kodesh
the
LaKodesh.
extension.
Ben Kodesh LeKodesh, we have to say.
I know, so he didn't.
So sometimes it happens the second. No, that doesn't make any
It would
sense.
still not make sense.
It shouldn't
Because
be
it's
this
still
way.
Kodesh.
So you caught him by mistake. So sorry.
Yeah, he's a good Kabbalist, though. He taught
is
me-
it?
This is Steinsaltz.
So he didn't bother checking it out. So go on.
Yeah,
And then,
because here we've got Ben Kodesh.
but it ends Ben Kodesh LaKodesh, and that's
Then that's correct. Then you have to say I'm Avdil ben Kodesh Lachol, ben Ol Lachosha ben Yom Hashvi L'Sheis Yamam, ben Kedusha
in
Shabbos
the end,
L'Kedusha
it's
Yom
Kodesh.
Tov
Okay.
Yidalta,
And then the
Yidalta V'Kedusha
Shehechianu. He doesn't have lighting the candles, because he
Right.
moves up right into Orachatz. He leaves out lighting the candles.
Well, that would make sense too, because we still have this problem. First of all, the other question: Yayin Kiddush, Borei Priya Gofen, and then, okay, that's what I meant by Yayin Kiddush. Then you do Ner Havdalah, and then you can transfer flame from something you've lit, the big candle, whatever.
And then you light the candles
So you could
afterwards.
like that, yeah.
So there, that's you know, sometimes you have to ask yourself the question, what is permitted, what is not permitted. Now, I would want to say in our situation, when you get a Seder together with people, and those people come and gather around, and before you even start with Kiddush and so on, I would say you should ben shlicht, you know. I'd want to do it before, to make a low plug, because these people, every time you make a Kiddush, you have the candles lit before, and you give the women the chance to do the lighting, and then you start with the Kiddush and so on. It makes a lot of sense to me that this would be the Minhag America that we would want to get together. And
To start with Havdalah.
Huh?
Start with Ner Havdalah, and then
well, look, are we getting so crazy about? It's 8:00, 8:15 at night. Shabbos was at 6:30. Okay, and we still light candles in shul.
yeah.
I just don't want to go by that geschäft when that's not really our minhag. The models I always give is that the only sacrifice that we still have is candles. And we don't need the candles for any shimush, to say, like, otherwise we would be sitting in the dark and there wouldn't be shalom bayis, so we have to have 2 candles in the house. We have artificial lighting and all that kind of stuff, so what's left over is lighting that holy fire. So I think it's a mitzvah. If I go to Chazal, when they were first looking at Lo tevaru eish b'chol moshvotechem b'yom Shabbat, you'd have to go around before Shabbos and douse every fire. So that's what what did they do? Asher kedishon v'svese v'tzivonu lahadlik ner shel Shabbos. So you say, hey, heichan tzivonu, you know. So they're asking the question, heichan tzivonu. So they come up that there'll be divrei rivot b'sharecha v'kam to v'aliso, you know, makom ashiv Hashem l'shakishim v'shem, and you'll ask the kohen and the shofet, v'asitzo kechol asher yerucha. And that's where it is written in the Torah that you should light candles, which is like so, you know. But it was a necessary thing. Eit lasas l'Hashem meferu torotecha. So now I feel if that was the situation, then in our day when this is it's a very pious act for people to go ahead and to shrei, oh you're lighting too late or something like this, is so not in our atmosphere, you know.
But how does this affect what we're saying about Pesach on Motzei Shabbos?
Rabbi Zalman is saying.
You're
that
saying
you
we should
do
do
like
Havdalah first?
I would like in our house it's gonna be hard to keep everyone waiting
Yeah.
that long, but I especially will want to have the lighting of the candles when you may light candles already, so that we don't start the Seder and the cooking, all that, you know, the warming, everything you're gonna have there for the Seder. That makes it very hard for any balabusta, and if you have to finish at noon, at midnight with the matzah, it's going to be very hard to have a Seder and to get the food ready and everything else. So still, I will want to begin with lighting the candles rather than with wait until after Havdalah.
So you're going to light the candles and then do Havdalah?
Yeah. But I will whisper before, Bo Hamadl ben Kodesh LeKodesh.
But you wouldn't do Havdalah early.
Huh?
You wouldn't do Havdalah early in order to
No.
do that.
That's what show you.
Listen, when I go and take the Alpidin, you know, let's go, the strict din is if I'm going to go and take out the Havdalah candles, you know, and I haven't made Havdalah yet, then I'm touching something that's muktzah.
That's right.
It's still a Shabbos.
That's right.
So that's why the thing was to say, Bo Hamavlu ben Kodesh L'choil, and thereby you accept for yourself that Shabbos is over, and then you do all the things, and you say it then with Hashem, Bo Chato Hashem, Hamavlu ben Kodesh L'choil. But before that's been the minhag around, that before you do anything, before you turn on the lights, before you say Bo Hamavlu ben Kodesh L'choil. So anyway, I'll whisper that. All right. Next, in Kiddush and after Kiddush.
Okay.
You're going to have some non-Jews at the Seder. What are you going to do with Asher Bochar Bono Im Kolan, right?
I don't.
Huh?
I say, and I don't do that.
What do you say?
I say the traditional one, but I say, everybody gets chosen
Yeah.
from everybody else. We get to be different. There's nothing wrong with being different. I'm chosen to be different my way. You're chosen to be different your way.
No, Gesundheit.
Well, the fact that we're going to have non-Jews at the Seder
Yeah.
is already an advancement from Chazal's time.
That's right.
All right. I mean, I grew up knowing that there were to be no non-Jews at the Seder.
That's the secret.
Except when you open the door for Elijah.
If he wasn't Jewish, I wouldn't let him in.
The reason we opened the door for Elijah is to let in the people who wanted to make sure we weren't killing their kids.
Right. The blood's over there. But it was such, I mean, for me, that was one of the,
I thought
personally,
it
it
was
was
to get the presents.
What?
to get the presents.
No,
because
that's why you
in
return the
in
matzah.
her house in Israel, Santa Claus, in effect, showed up. At
Eliyahu showed up.
Eliyahu
Yeah,
with a
that's
bag
right.
with matanot for the Yoadim.
That's wonderful.
It was a beautiful
It was
thing
my
to see.
Savta's minhag. I don't know where it came from, but every year.
But for me, the paradigm shift for Pesach was the first time that Nadya and I said, let's have a non-Jew. It was like, whoa, And what's wonderful is that they love the Siddharim because they haven't been to long ones before.
We always had.
But now, Reb Zalman, what's your take on seeing how you're a little bit older than Elazar ben Azariah?
Say that again.
That you're a little bit older than
Yes.
So now, do you understand about why the Yetziat Mitzrayim is at night?
That is such a wonderful issue. The whole conversation, but I leave it out for my story. Yeah, because when I want to teach how Midrash Halacha and Midrash Haggadah was happening in Chazal, I use the Haggadah. That's such a wonderful example. Because it takes you through all the questions that you would create halachically about, is that okay, is this not okay, and how do you unpack a posuk, Vayareo tanu hamitzrim v'yanunu, and then you take each one of those words and you put it into to show what other psukim there are that would expand it. So if somebody says to me, how does Midrash work? I take him to the Haggadah because it's a wonderful example of that. But when you look at when he says Kulanu Chachamim, Kulanu Nebonim, Kulanu Yodim Torah, so he has some people there. There's so many arguments being given about that they were planning a revolt, and everybody reads into their Geschäften what it was. I don't think so. I think they were sitting and talking Torah, a whole night, Achebo Talmideim.
Right. Okay, so
It was a map of 70 years.
Yeah, what year was this? This was somewhere around year 71, 72, something like that.
Maybe would have had to be later.
Yeah.
Later than, because 120, we're going to Rabbi Akiva, his martyrdom and so on and so forth.
Oh, okay. So, I remember when we had that shiur several years ago, and there was the woman who was a professor of Bible
Yeah.
from JTS was here, right? And I raised the question about the paradigm shift that took place, that must have taken place in the year 71, for the first Pesach after the destruction of the temple.
I think that was too soon.
But they had to face the fact that you could no longer bring the korbanos.
Yeah, I agree with you that they had to face the facts, but if I ask myself, what is it likely to have been at that time, after the destruction, to ask these questions, it takes a certain kind of normalcy to come back. When you go and look at the people who just came out, the first camps outside of Auschwitz when they were liberated, people were in such shock and such things. I don't think it happened immediately. It takes a certain kind of leisure to ask these questions.
Okay, so let's move on to the leisure period.
Yeah. 73.
Okay, so they move on to, okay, so they gather, they can no longer offer the Korban Pesach.
Yeah.
They gather on the night of Pesach. What
Yeah.
do they do? All right? I'm sure that these Rabbanim got together. They also could not do it in the open. It had to be secret.
Right.
And maybe somebody brought a shank bone. Who knows? I mean, there had to be a creativity. Somebody must
I
have,
don't think that they really had it down at that time yet.
parts of it were very early.
Well, look, there's some Sfardim to this day who will eat lamb and have a real shank bone.
That's right.
So it's
I had a Yemenite Seder in my first year in Israel. I was in Petach Tikva with this wonderful traditional Yemenite family, and lamb was served, but they must have, before the symbols arose, you know, I'm sure the first time somebody didn't say, here, what's the karpas, but they must have told the story.
And how it was in the Beis Hamikdash.
Yeah.
I can imagine. You remember when you have Betzeiti Mitzrayim, Betzeiti Mirushalayim in the keynote. There is that dirge about it. They may have sat down and said, "Oi, do you remember 3 years ago, the last time, and there was that Kohen Gadol, the Paskodniak, you know, and he didn't do it right, and we had to, and it was Rabbi Hanina Skana Kohanim who pinch hit for him." And so, I mean, I can imagine they must have talked about that. Oi, was this? Do you remember how the Kohanim stood there with the Sfalim and they passed on the blood? Do you remember how they washed out the Azara? You read to this day in many Haggadot they have the Seder Korban Pesach.
But the talking about it would have been, I mean, we would have already been used to that concept from the Babylonian exile. You know, the concept of talking about it because we couldn't do it.
Yeah,
So I'm agreeing with you. I think that the guys would have sat there and talked about it and said, this is what would have happened and this is what would have happened. And soon in Yotz Hashem it will happen, you know, that sort of thing.
That's right. So they were reminiscing about that, and I think that must have been. So you have Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Talfan, and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah were Talmidim of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So it couldn't have been that quick because they first gathered in Yavne.
Right.
But let's take a look here when he gets to Dor Ben Zoma and he says, how do you deal with Laman Tizkor Yom Tzeischon is Kol Yemei Chayach, what's Lerabot? Because always when they're talking about the word Kol, it means to include something. So what does it include? So then you have the Halachi, which is saying, Yemei Chayecha Hayamim, Kol Yemei Chayecha Halelot, right? And then you have the Agadic flip that says, okay, so we got that up here, okay? Now then he gets Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah, and he takes for granted that everybody knows that the Torah has 4 sentences that talk about teaching children. And I think that this is we can't take it for granted unless we say, if we mean to follow this level of the Haggadah, to say, the Torah really talks about 4 times about telling the children going out of Egypt, and then tell the 4 languages. So then he comes to the Chochem and the Rosh and the Tam Sheni Yedei Bishol. Okay. V'higadat levincha yochel b'rosh chodesh talmud lehem b'yom hahu, v'yom yochel mevod yom talmud lehem b'avu zeh lo amarti elisha b'shor yizmat zomorem monochem lefanecha. Now, originally, that didn't say matzah mora menachem lefanecha. What's missing? Which word? Huh?
The Pesach.
The Pesach sacrifice. And in some Haggadahs they have it either in bracket or straight. You know, bezman shepesach matzah mora menachem lefanecha, that you can point to them. Okay. Then he goes to the mitchila and vekach et avichem, and he begins with the genai. he puts us down a great deal and says, Arami Ovid Ovi, and we were not such good people, and we were slaves, and so on and so forth. And God did the whole thing for
This
us.
wasn't ever used.
Huh?
This Haggadah wasn't ever used.
Yeah.
No,
Cut
it's
it with
it's
that.
still, yeah. I'm afraid to.
You can cut it with that.
Yeah, this looks better.
Okay. But then follow a little bit longer, okay? Then we're going to go to after V'yishamdo and after Tseomad, and then you look at the word Vayeret Mitzrayma, okay? Because he had mentioned the pasuk before. What was a great pasuk on which he begins all these things? Yadoa teda ki ger yezarecha be'eretz lo lahem ve'avadum v'yinu v'zava v'zagoya sheyavud donanoch v'achikin yisabach kush gadol, okay? So he has the pasuk Vayeret Mitzrayma before, okay? So he then says Anus al pi dibur Vayagar sham melamed shelo yarat Yaakov Avinu lishtakea b'Mitzrayim lagur sham. Lishtakea, to be sunken into, yeah. But to remain a stranger there. Shenema, I remember how this is often being said, you guys are mishtakea in America, that's not the way it should be, you should only be gerim here, etc., because we are still in Golis and so on, so that's how people dealt with that. So then b'metei me'at, he unpacks each one. Then he comes to the pasuk Va Yareyu Otanu Amitzrim V'Yanun V'Yitnu Alei Avodah Kasha. Now, you see one pasuk, and then watch how he unpacks the pasuk. Va Yareyu K'mo shenemar, V'Yanunu K'mo shenemar, V'Yitnu Aleinu Avodah Kasha K'mo shenemar. So he crosses psukim with psukim, and he takes each word and unpacks it that way. That's why I think that's such a wonderful example to show how Midrash works. We can do posik by posik. Anybody has anything else to say after we get out of that? All this, by the way, is a baraita to begin with, all these shtickler things in the baraita. Now we come to the Esam Makot. And by the time Rabbi Yossi Aglili gets involved here, how many makkahs there were, I just feel, and even when I said it fast.
We skip it.
All right. So then comes the issue with the dayenu, with the question, do you say it bitmiya, or do you say it benichasa? And many of the Rabbis have said you have to say it bitmiya. Would that have been enough? Here we stand in front of the sea. It hasn't split yet, and the Egyptians are coming. What do you mean dayenu? You know, you have to say dayenu as a question. Would that have been enough? That's right. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak is the one who is known for that, but other people have said the same thing.
So you got to change the melody. Doesn't work.
No, we sing the melody, but we explain.
My grandfather just would put the word lo before it.
Lo dayenu.
Lo dayin. His was more aggressive. He wasn't going to let God off the hook until we made us a holy people.
No, that's till the end. Okay. But does that work melodically?
Yeah. Well, look who you're asking. But,
Yeah, it works. Of course.
for me it works.
Look who is asking.
That too. That's great. They ask her the answer, this is true.
It's the same. Okay, so.
So, but we always taught the whole idea of dayenu as being in a mode of gratitude and
That's
it's
right.
enough
I'm sitting here
and all
with
of that.
this sort of feeling like it messes the whole Torah for me.
Well, but it's just a preface that way. Al achar kama v'chama tov v'kfula mechupelet aleinu. Look what he did, and so it was like first he's trying to say he did that. Wouldn't that been a miracle already? Isn't that a miracle? Isn't that a miracle? Isn't that a miracle? The Dayenu is what comes up when you say, but as a question mark. But then it comes to Achat Kama V'Kama. He just points out all these things until V'Chnisanu L'Eretz Yisrael V'Bamlan Et Beit HaBchira L'Chaper Al Avonotenu, which, by the way, is what on Shabbos morning we'll be saying up to here on Shabbos HaGodel. You're supposed to say Haggadah up to L'Chaper Al Avonotenu.
So Erev Pesach this time is Shabbat HaGadol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which doesn't allow very much to do for poor people. Because usually you make a drosha and you create moes chitim and all that has to be prepared beforehand. Yeah. Good.
So instead of Dayenu, maybe what we really would want to be saying is Modim Anachnu.
That's right.
Yeah.
For each individual part of this rescue mission.
So take a look, for instance,
That's nice.
if we were to begin, Hu Hotzianu Mitzrayim, and then we say Ki Leolam Chazdo, Hu Asa B'hem Shvatim, Ki Leolam Chazdo, and that's how the Ki Leolam Chazdo in Hallel is anyway, you know. But here, look, what can I say? The Haggadah is a beautiful snapshot of. It's an album, really, of several snapshots from different times in the past, and I think if you treat it as a straitjacket, teug nicht, you know. All right, but let's look. Do you have any inyonim of pshat in?
There's so much in this particular Haggadah. There's so many lengthy explanations of each part. It's hard to even, skim through them all to give any summary.
You see how the Chachamim put this all so clearly, because they're putting that the spin of Hashgacha Prati is so strong on Yetzias Mitzrayim, and it's very necessary because it's one of the ikrim of our story. So he has Vayeret Mitzrayim. He says Anus al Pia Dibur. That the fact that they didn't have anything to eat and that they had to go to Mitzrayim for all kinds of other reasons, and that Yosef was there and he sent the wagons and all that kind of stuff. They don't push that. But then you see that part of doing theology is to highlight the Heilsgeschichte, that what God was doing for us, and that's basically what this is. Anything you want to say on Metzuyanim Sham? Anything on that Yecheskel Rava B'Katzimach Hasadi Netatich V'Tirbe V'Tigdeli V'Tavoyi B'Adi Yadayim Shadayim Nachon Osarech Tzimech V'At Eron Be'eriach Ve'ever Alayach Ve'erech Mitboses B'Damayich V'Omelach B'Damayich Hayi V'Omelach B'Damayich Hayi. Anything that comes to you about that?
You're going backward now. You went back.
Yeah, so I just want to not leave the issue of Magid because there's a lot of stuff that happens in Magid, and I want to hear what do you like to do with Magid, because it's pretty clear to all of us that we aren't necessarily going to go with Magid as it's in the Haggadah, in the printed Haggadah. So
Right. It depends on each period of time. There was a period of time that I like to talk about the Underground Railroad.
Uh-huh.
All right, to relate it to the slave period and the escape of so many slaves to the north.
Right.
Right. I remember. I mean, in my consciousness of moving away from the traditional Haggadah really came in, what was it, 1969, or when Arthur wrote the first Freedom Haggadah.
Right.
When it came out, I was at the seminary. I went home to L.A. I was asked to do the second Seder at the University of Judaism. With the war and with civil rights and all those experiences in my life, I brought in, I didn't know who he was, Arthur's Freedom Seder, and we did it there. It was controversial. All right?
And at the same time, I had packed so much power. When I saw it in Ramparts, I wrote him a fan letter. This is how I got to know him. Because I felt that this was, he was somebody who was really taking it seriously. And what does it mean then today? Yes.
Years back, I had the opportunity to have a Seder with Rabbi Ariel Bar Tzadok.
Yeah.
And so we did a real Sephardic Kabbalist Seder. First of all, we sat all on the floor and we reenacted the Last Supper, so to speak. And so how they do it in the Sephardic families, they have a
Pickle on the back.
a sack. How do you say it in Yiddish?
Pickle.
A
A
peckle.
peckle, yeah.
Right.
That you pass it around.
As far as you do with a peckle.
They have a different name.
Yeah, a chavila.
But it really was very powerful, and this was the Maggid part.
Right.
So each person, and we passed it from one to another, and each person said, I am Moshe ben Maimon ben, we would come up with all kinds of good names. And what's important to say is, identify yourself as one of the people that leave Egypt, and you say what you leave behind and what you take with you, and you have to end with, I'm going to Eretz Israel.
Wow,
And everyone around the table gets to
that's nice.
get the pekale and say
That's
it.
nice.
And then people can really say whatever they feel in that moment of personal liberation. And this was the Maggid.
So we did something that was a variation. I didn't know this particular thing, but we've actually done this twice in two different communities where we invited the people who were coming to our Seder to bring with them their chavilah. That we gave them the assignment to imagine that they had to leave that night, to leave their home, and they didn't know where they were going, but they knew they couldn't come back. And all they could take was what they could carry on their back. And we asked them to bring to the Seder what they're carrying with them. So people showed up at our Seder with backpacks and different kinds of chavilot that they could carry on their back. And for the Maggid, everybody opened their bag and explained what they chose to bring with them and why this was what they brought with them. You know, so I remember we had Debbie and Barry Barkin Alter at our Seder that year, and you know, Debbie had her grandmother's candlesticks, you know, and her wedding album. And Barry's looking, going, "Where's the food?" You know, like, you didn't bring any food for us. But it was beautiful. We had some really
Toilet paper.
We had Balta and Benji that year at the Seder too. It was amazing, and that Maggid went longer than in the old days when we read the whole Haggadah. But nobody it was such an amazing experience to see how people made their choices, what they brought with them, what they imagined, why they would need this and not something else, and what they thought the road ahead might be. Without any other, you know, it was beautiful. It was fun.
And the recognition has to be, you take only what you can carry.
Yeah,
So
that was
don't-
it. They had to bring only what they could carry on their back
Right.
for a long time.
When I start asking myself, what would I want to schlep along from here if Chalila B'chas I have to leave this house, and what is the ikar of stuff
Yeah.
that I would take, I go crazy.
Yep,
Well,
we went through that when the house was almost burned down.
when there was the big Malibu fire and we had to be evacuated because we were living in the canyon right next to it, we had 40 minutes to evacuate. I'm looking at my library, right? I don't know what to do. So I called my old roommate, you met him, Kenny. I said, what do I take? He said, well, you never like Talmud it, so leave those. And he said, just take that, you know, you were so into Heschel, make sure you take his books. I say, some of it can be replaced, some of it are, you know. He said, don't hock and chinik, you got to get out of the house, all right? But it's an amazing issue. There was that old story was told at JTS that when the students were interviewed for entrance into rabbinical school, Zalman Schachter would ask, you're going to be a rabbi in Greenland, what are you going to take? And they'd sit there and they'd say, Machzorim and Sidurim and Tefillin and Talesim and on and on and on. And then he'd say, how about some warm clothing? Alright? So it's the same thing. I'd make sure if I were leaving Egypt, I'd take my Birkenstocks. I'm going to be walking on the sand,
In the DLTI group, we are exchanging emails about the other people's ideas, and another nice idea came up. Somebody said they're doing it traditionally in the Seder. Instead of bringing a whole backpack, which for me, by the way, in parentheses, has a very eerie feeling of leaving the house to go to the ghetto. For me, it's a hard thing. But the other things they brought up was to bring one object that symbolizes an act of liberation that I had, or realization of liberation, or something that happened in the past year, and share that as an experience of liberation. That's kind of...
Yeah, that is such a terrible thing about the ghetto thing. When they said people came with those little suitcases, packed with a few things that they could take, and the cruelty that was there, because it didn't mean for them to keep it either.
It was taken anyway.
But they figured that people will take their valuables, and then so they don't have to go look for them.
But on the other hand, it's like, we can identify, you can have that sort of that visceral reaction to the backpack as the pekalach that you're taking to the ghetto, because it's so much closer to us. It's something we recognize, but we don't somehow have the same feeling about Yetziat Mitzrayim, where they were also leaving everything they had known and going to the unknown, following an unseen God. Why wouldn't that be as wrenching? And I think maybe, for someone who would make that association, when I invite them to bring their backpack to my Seder, it's dafka doing exactly what we're supposed to do for Pesach.
But they were leaving.
Is really having the feeling of.
But they were leaving
difference.
something
Right.
awful
That's true.
to go to something unknown. These people were leaving something relatively okay to
Right,
go
to go to something awful.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I'm not comparing, that.
Well, it wasn't this way. You see, you forget what's going on.
that they did.
The way in which they were placing it, this is an Umsiedlung. They said, we're going to take you now to another place where you will live as Jews and you will have your own government. And they showed us money that they printed in Germany at that point. And it wasn't, can you imagine if they would have said you are going to be burnt? No.
Yeah.
How people would have lined up? They told us lies at that time. So it wasn't.
But
it
we
was-
look back on it.
No,
they
from-
wouldn't have gotten to that.
No, from
right?
our perspective, if we
Right.
look at the Nachtum Nebel, how people were walking with those bags is another story. But then it didn't feel that way. There
Maybe
was
it
a hope.
depends.
Can you imagine they're emptying the Warsaw Ghetto? You don't know they're going to wind up in Majdanek, okay? And the conditions in the Warsaw Ghetto have been so bad, and they're lining them up, and you're going to take them with a train and so on and so forth. There was still they were lying to us and giving us at the same time some hope. Look at the Mishigas of people would arrive and they would play music.
Sure, the story of the orchestra in Treblinka. Theresienstadt.
Theresienstadt, yes.
There were assembled some of the greatest musicians, and they actually believe that these connectors, you have to go through the levels of thought. Yes, these Germans aren't as bad as they seem to be because they are cultured and they want to hear Mozart and Brahms. And so they have us doing an orchestra. We are going to live because they want to hear the music, these steps of logic that they go through when there was no intention of having them. It was one of the great jokes, the cruelest of jokes. So, but then there are stories of how Pesach was observed by some of the Jews in the camp.
In the camps, right.
It's like, I remember, in the 70s, when I was doing graduate work and did so much work on the Shoah, the big issue then was how much resistance there was. And it was so hard in Israel to relate to the notion of spiritual resistance. All they would look at is the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the armed, the guns, the grenades that would be used. And they had no sense of the spiritual resistance. And when you'd raise the question of, look at these people making decisions on how to observe Pesach, when, refusing to eat the bread that was given to them, all right, to gather secretly, worn out from the work, to recite a little bit of the Haggadah together, whispering it on the bunks. If that isn't resistance, phew.
Or writing their own Torah.
Well, but don't forget where people were at that time. It was Lehi, it was Tzahal, it was the Haganah, it was all those things, and that's what they were pushing, the strength that they had. You remember that letter that Boulder, the Boulder and Gandhi
Exchange
the
between
exchange of that, was it?
The exchange.
Yeah, I mean, he because Gandhi was strongly urging that passive resistance be the course of the Palestinian Jews, and Buber wrote back, which seemingly was so out of character with him, saying, "It's got the, there are circumstances."
I don't get it.
Yeah, there's circumstances.
As a matter of fact, Gandhi's grandson was in Israel a few years ago.
Aruna, yeah.
And he went to Israel giving the same statement that his father had made, regarding us again.
Yeah.
And he came away saying, this is more complicated.
Yeah. I mean, look,
But
right
there
after,
is some kind of a Palestinian Gandhi movement now in Israel.
to
Do you
go
know that?
out there. But right after the
Peaceful
Six-Day
resistance.
War, there were Haggadot that came out from the kibbutzim that had pictures of phantoms on it and tanks. It was the great celebration. It was another Yetziat Mitzrayim, but this time it was with
And
phantoms.
especially in the Shomer Tzair thing, it wasn't the Rebbeinu Shalom that took us out.
No.
Well, I have a Haggadah from 43 that everything is in block prints, black and white, and even the happy is sad. And then I have one at 48 from Israel with gold-lined pages and pictures, and coming to Israel is the Israel of 48.
Yeah.
And with the borders and everything. It's really, I'd love to show those two next to each other.
And I have a copy of the first, Saloniki was one of the great publishing centers for Sfarim. And after the Holocaust, the very first book that was published in Hebrew and in Greek was a Haggadah. So it was done in, I think, 46. And I have a copy of it, and it's like you're 43. It is, because the Greek Jewish community was decimated, like 95% of it. And so the remnants of it wanted to produce a Haggadah. It was a Haggadah of tears, There was no celebration, except that, we remember when we were, slaves.
And hope for something.
Yeah, and hope for something better.
I have a question, a little bit different. Rabbi Zalman, in next Torah portion, the Haftarah in Malachi, is that verse we have to say twice about Eliyahu Hanavi.
Yeah.
How can we connect it to our Eliyahu that we opened the door to?
That's first of all, the Eliyahu, that somebody did a very nice doctoral dissertation about showing the difference between the Eliyahu Hanavi of Chazal and the Eliyahu Hanavi of Mikra. It's very clear that it's not the same being, and he has already been tamed, from being the Pinchas Eliyahu, then being Eliyahu and Har Carmel, and then he has to come to a bris, and the Sandik was a Balavera, and so he says he can't stand to come to a bris if the Sandik is a Balavera, or the father. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says, therefore I'll forgive them so you can come to the bris. I mean, there's a whole other... Eliyahu Navi is the one who is like the Chiddur. He teaches us all kinds of things. He's a shtickle trickster. Also, it's not quite the same Eliyahu Hanavi whom we find in Mikra. And we were talking about Van Daniken and the and space travel and stuff like that. So when you have Ala Besara Hashamayma, Elechev Yisrael Parashav, and he's crying. So can you imagine there's the shuttle about to take off and Bahir kol mimal rakia be'omdom terapenu kanfeim. You have all these wonderful psukim of the Merkava and how it's moving around and so on. So, I mean, I don't know. It's so interesting to puzzle about that he had come, that he had done his job, and then is leaving. I asked myself, if I would want to run such a thing as he did on Har Carmel, what would I do? I would have to take raw sodium and put it into the altar there and then pour water on top of it.
That's what he was wondering.
Right?
And then say abracadabra.
Yeah.
Oh, this is such terrible, what's the word, heresy. Yeah?
We wanted.
Coming from you, I'm surprised. I'm
Well,
shocked.
I tell you, in Gashmias it looks like this sometimes. That's why I just have the feeling that if you stay with Gashmias alone, like you were just saying before about resistance, the spiritual resistance, what that was like. If you stay only in Gashmias, then you come. Let me read a little bit here from this Sefer Derech Pekudecha. We don't have that much time. The Derech Pekudecha is the work of Reb Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov. He is the one who wrote the Agra de Kala and Bnei Yisachar. And he decided to write a book about the Taryag Mitzvahs. He never finished the whole book, but he did a beautiful job with the beginning. And he begins each piece with Chelek HaMaseh, then Chelek HaDibur, and then finally Chelek HaMachshava. Okay? Which is very nice because then you see where he takes you into the kavanah of the thing after he has said the Chelek HaMaseh. So he has Shelo Yimtza Yimatzei Chametz B'Rshus Yisrael Kol Zayin Yemei HaPesach, and talks about Chelek HaMaseh. Then Chelek HaDibur, he talks about selling the chametz to a non-Jew, and how you have to say, how you mevatel the chametz with the words, and then he gets to Chelek HaMachshava that I'm going to read now. Okay. רמז המצווה והטעם שיש בה, נראה לי, על פי אשר כתבנו כעניין החומץ, רמז לגאות וגאון. דמיון החומץ שמגביה את עצמו יותר ממה שנתן בה העושה קמח ומים. So that everybody talks about that, the puffed up business of chometz, how it, the bubbles in it. ובאת המצווה שלא ימצא אפילו ברשותו להורות הרמז, דהנה יש לך אדם שאינו מתנהג בגלוי בגאות ואדרבה מראה את עצמו כנמוכי רוח, ומיטב עם כל אחד בקרבו ישים ערבו רמות רוח היתר שלדעתי יש בו כל המעלות ואפילו מידת ענווה. Okay? He's saying chometz is so hidden, so insidious, that it'll bring you to the place where you will, if you do everything, then you'll also figure how good you are that you were keeping so humble, And what will you say about my humility? So he's making this point that even that has to be eliminated. I'm trying to find something here, and I don't know what happened to it now. The question is, if I think it was the Maggid of Mezrich who's asking the question. if chometz is, like you say, it is gava, then why is it that we shouldn't be, we should be allowed to eat chometz during the whole year?
And also, why do we sell it to our neighbors?
Huh?
Why do we sell it to the goyim?
Uh-huh.
They should have it the nuts.
Well, listen,
And then buy it back.
the thing of selling things, some people get really boigus about the kenunya. Why do you make such a deal when it's not real, and so on and so forth. I used to be so careful with this. We had a guy by the name of Har-DiGenarro. He was a Syrian, lived in the neighborhood, and I always made sure when I sold him the chometz to also give him a key to a cabinet that had schnapps inside, chometzige schnapps. So during Pesach he should come and take for himself that's his schnapps. He should be able to come and take a drink, to own it.
Very
And the
Hasidic.
deal that I made with him was, of course, that he owes me $1 million. How was it? $1,005,000, and $5 he gave me down payment, and I gave him back later on $1,010,000. So he got his money back, and that's how we made the deal. So it should be at least a tovat hana'ah for him, with the schnapps included.
Yeah, he made money and he got the drink.
Yeah.
Good.
He was a nice guy. He understood these things. A Syrian is like a cousin already. But when you look at the way in which it was set up, about the prosbul and so on and so forth, here's the Torah Tamagit, yeah. Now, where is it? Where he says that name? Yeah, so let me read you that shtickle of the Magid, then I'll go back to the other one. Ita bezohar, meichle de asuta, vehiksha lama lo nechal matzah kol hashana. V'tiretz, mashal lemelech, ve'et shenase melech haya melubash bebgadim tovim yoter mikulam, ולשנה הבאה ביום זה הולך מלובש גם כן בהם. פירש, כי האדם בשעה שהוא אוכל הוא מעלה דיבורים, כי הכל נברא בדיבורים של הקדוש ברוך הוא, ואין דיבור בלא אותיות. נמצא האותיות הם החיות של כל הנבראים, על דרך משל, השלוש האותיות של חיטה, הוא חיות של העצמה, the letters ח' ט' ה' make for wheat. כי כן כסיב ויחסו את אלוקים ויאכלו וישתו פירו ויחסו, כף בית עטבון מאלף עד תו. I don't get that. ויחסו את, okay, from Aleph to Tav. They were able to see the Oasis, כי הכף בית עטבון הם החיות והצורה של כל הנבראים. ויאכלו וישתו הצורה של כל הנבראים ולא החומר. Oh. He's saying, how could they see God and sit down and have a physical meal? So he said, what they really consumed was the otiyot that gave it life, okay? כשאדם אוכל אותו נתחזק כוח המחמד המאכלים, ויש לו כוח לדבר דיבורים של תורה ותפילה, מהדיבורים נעשה לבושים להשם יסבורך ודל. וזה פירש בזוהר, כי בשעה שיצא ממצרים יצא הדעת בגלות. אז זה למען תדון כי אני השם. ונירות ונגלות אלוקותה ומלכותה בזה הזמן. אם כן, כל שבעת ימים שהיה אוכל מצה ונעשה דיבורים של מצה, אם כן, היה מלביש את עצמו מלבושי המצה, כמו המלך בשעה שנעשה מלך, וזה פירוש התירוץ, כמו שהמלך אינו הולך במלבושים הטובים מכולם, כי אם בשנעשה מלך, כן הוא כאן. What he's saying is just like you have special occasion dress that the king wears, and the letters Mem Tzadik Hey are the special levushim that the Rabbi Zalman has, and it fits only to wear them during that season and not the rest of the year. Okay. All right, that's a schwache answer.
No, but I think it's more than that. there's certain things that I really enjoy eating on Pesach. You know, the charoset that I make, I really like it. You know, the other things with the matzah brai, I really like it, but I wouldn't like it if I ate it all year long. It has, you know, by separating it like this and making it special, really, you know.
Well, people have been complaining, saying that the turkey that you get doesn't taste so good anymore. Something happened to turkey. What happened to turkey is that you eat it not only on Thanksgiving, you know.
Right.
But the notion of chametz being, as you said last night, ego rather than pride,
Yeah,
it makes more sense. I mean, maybe if it's out of proportion, it becomes pride, and maybe by observing a week of Pesach, of matzah,
yeah,
we bring it down from gava to healthy self-esteem, or rather than, you know, the kind of ego, as you said yesterday,
Yeah.
like a manager of affairs, but
Right.
not the boss.
yeah.
And that the week that we don't have it is like the chemical reaction that changes it for the rest of the
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
There's another aspect. I mean, this whole, because it's a real issue. You take, for example, your work on tshuva. What I found most important, first of all, is to have people understand that you don't wait until Yom Kippur to do tshuva. You got day, week, month, all right?
Mhm.
And it's that seeing things, being able to see things from a distance and seeing things up close. And you need time for that. With Pesach, I mean, it's like, does anybody know anybody who said, you know, somewhere around October, I really have a hankering for charoset and make some and eat it. Olav salka de'atach, you know? But that may be a problem.
Don't be so sure. I tell you, in a while, there are going to be restaurants that are going to be serving charosses in the middle of the year. Like Blintz is not only on Shavuos, you know, and Kreplach not only on Purim.
I mean, I know the supermarkets, every time they hear that there's a Jewish holiday,
Yeah.
out comes the matzah. They don't know, you know, it's
Yeah.
Purim, matzah comes out. It's Rosh Hashanah, matzah comes out.
Maybe we should put matzah every Rosh Chodesh. That way we would
Yes, but
remind ourselves
it's-
of what
that
it's
was my
about.
point,
That's
is
like
that-
the tshuva part.
I mean, we do have in every, you know, every service, most every prayer has a Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim thing, but we don't ritualize it. We mouth it. It's once again a word. And what is it that the thematics of Pesach need to be reinforced beyond the 8 days that we do it? I don't know how to do it. I mean, other than what we have.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Or maror, to remind us of the bitterness.
Every time I have gefilte fish, I have some maror in there.
I knew it would end up eating.
I tell you, I think I don't want to take it away from Pesach. I really want to leave all these things especially for Pesach. And don't do me any favors. I'm the maror maker in this family, and I need to put on the gas mask in the middle of the year. Yeah. But when you start asking this issue of how you use time, that's why it's always such an it upsets me when somebody says you should always be like this. Whatever, you know, you're saying, oh, this was so high, I had such a great experience, and then they say you should always be like this, you know. And I want to say, what do you mean? You know, it's like, this is the periodicity and so on. It's really important. It should come from period to period. That's so different between householders and people who are monks. Somebody goes for a 3-year retreat, you know, then you don't celebrate during these things. You take a look about Reb Shimon Bar Yochai being 12 years in the cave and then an extra year with his son. And the likelihood is that he didn't have a lulav and didn't have Pesach and he didn't have all this. And he was in a very high place. But once you're back in the world and you're grounded, you know, Oskim B'chayesho again, you need to have all these things and they need to come with periods. Yeah. The other thing is also that element of the feminine. The periodicity has something to do with the feminine. You know it's going to come back, and it's not forever that you have anything, and it's going to come back. And I think I like this about Yom Tov, and each time it's a notch higher. It goes on the next level. So, all right, they're making it very, very hard. He wants to have that kind of, the anivut and the bitul hayesh, and this is always what I object with to bitul hayesh and say transparency. Yeah. Okay, next week, are we gonna? It's not yet Erev Pesach, is it?
No,
No.
2
I
weeks.
wanted to bring up one thing that is so lost often in Pesach, and having to do with Korach. When we have our seders and we do Korach, what do? We put the maror on the matzah and then we put charosut on it, and then we make a big deal out of this. And I always say to people, that's not it, because what kind of that's a lousy sandwich. But if you think what Hillel did with it, it's matzah and maror
And the Pesach.
and the Pesach. Now lamb and horseradish on matzah. This is a sandwich.
Well, he didn't use horseradish either. you
Well,
know.
but
So is pastrami.
to put the harosat and the maror is such I say, look, Hillel would have done it this way, and that makes a sandwich.
Yeah. So and also their matzahs were not hard.
Right.
The softer matzahs.
Right.
Which is important, because you take a bite and you're left with a piece of meat hanging here, because all the matzah shells.
Right.
And,
Well, the Yemenites, when they do the matzah, they put it in a bowl of water, and then you get it. And trying to swallow it. I mean, if this is the first matzah for 12 months, and it's wet, it's just soaking there. And then, Steinsaltz points out that the minhag among others is that chas v'sholom should be wet.
right.
So I don't. There's the two extremes.
Well,
about
it was a pita-ish thing.
Well, the great grandmother in this Yemenite family, she had a tanur outside made out of clay,
Yeah.
and she baked the matzah, and it didn't taste like any, or look like any, and it didn't look like shmura matzah that I'm used to. It was really weird stuff, but then it was brittle, and then at the table there was a special bowl. You said the motzi and everything, and it was scooped into the water and handed out, and you got this. You tried to eat it, and that was the Yemenite thing. They have the wonderful minhag was when you come to Magi, everybody going around the circle. You sit in a circle, and everybody does this in a sing-song, individual after individual, until you get it done. And I couldn't, with my musical ability, I'm going to pick up that sing-song of the Yemenites, so I went into an Ashkenazic one, and they booed me. It's so funny.
Was it because it was Ashkenazi, or
Yes.
because it was...
And not
Yeah, I didn't know what the name is. And so you have that would be the Galiciana. Couple of Hashem used to say, "Oh, Yavud, the far of Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim, Vil lo yatzek de shor me Mitzrayim." Ayayina v'nim far of Mitzrayim, and then he would say, "V'cholamar b'zapa b'tzias Mitzrayim, harai zehi mishiboch." Right? That was his notion. V'chol hamadel lezapel b'yisiyat Mitzrayim adeve mishuma. Okay, Chevra, next week again, but we won't meet Erev Pesach.
That's good.
That's good.
This is when we're going to burn the chametz.